What if I told you there is a Scottish lake that holds more water than all of England and Wales combined? Did you know a stone tower 137 meters tall is slowly splitting in half, and nobody knows when it will collapse? And that Scotland sits on rocks older than multicellular life itself, stones that watched the birth of oxygen, from whirlpools loud enough to hear from 10 miles away to volcanic calderas that rewrote geology textbooks, from mountains colder than the Arctic to medieval islands that sailed here from Canada. This is 50 mind-blowing geography facts about Scotland that will change how you see it. Scotland is not just castles and bagpipes, it is a war zone. A land built on the collision of ancient continents, carved by ice, torn by faults, and shaped by volcanoes that exploded when dinosaurs were still 250 million years away. The rocks here are among the oldest on Earth, the seas are among the deadliest. And the landscapes? They are so extreme that British commandos trained here to fight Nazis in the Arctic. This is Scotland, where every mountain has a violent past, every loch hides a secret, and the ground itself is still moving. Fact 50. Britain's highest peak is flat. Ben Nevis rises 1,345 meters above sea level, making it the tallest mountain in the United Kingdom. But here is the twist. Its summit is not a sharp peak. It is a flat plateau covering 100 hectares, larger than 70 football fields. The top is a frozen, windswept wasteland where snow lingers year-round. Temperatures sit 10 degrees Celsius colder than the base. It feels less like a mountain and more like landing on another planet. Fact 49. A lake that outweighs 2 countries, Loch Ness, contains more fresh water than every lake, river and reservoir in England and Wales combined. We're talking 7.5 cubic kilometers of water, roughly 263 billion cubic feet. To put that in perspective, you could submerge the entire population of Earth 10 times over in Loch Ness. One Scottish lake holds more water than 2 entire countries, deeper than the sea around it. Loch Ness reaches a maximum depth of 230 meters. That is deeper than the average depth of the North Sea, which sits at just 94 meters. You imagine you could drop the Eiffel Tower halfway into Loch Ness and it would disappear beneath the surface. A lake deeper than the ocean around it, geographic inversion at its finest. Fact 47. Scotland's deepest secret. Loch Morar is Scotland's deepest lake at 310 meters. That's 80 meters deeper than Ben Nevis is tall. Picture this. You could fit the entire Shard building of London inside it. Drop something into Loch Morar and it would vanish. It is deeper than many sections of the North Sea. It is a lake that plunges deeper than the surrounding mountains rise. Fact 46. An archipelago of ghosts. Scotland has between 790 and 900 offshore islands, depending on what you count as an island. But here is the catch. Only 96 are permanently inhabited. That means 90% of Scotland's islands are empty. Ghost islands. Forgotten rocks scattered across the Atlantic, home to seabirds and silence. Fact 45. The island with an identity crisis. One island, 2 identities. Lewis and Harris is technically one island, the largest in Scotland, at 2,179 square kilometers. But ask the locals. They will insist it is 2. The 21,574 residents are fiercely divided. Say you're on Lewis when you're in Harris and you've made an enemy. Geography says 1, culture says 2. Closer to Norway than Edinburgh. The Shetland Islands sit 170 kilometers north of mainland Scotland, but 190 kilometers west of Norway. They are geographically closer to Scandinavia than to their own capital. Shetland is Britain's Arctic outpost, a windswept Viking world. Fact 43. Rocks older than oxygen. In the Northwest Highlands and on the Outer Hebrides you will find Lewisian gneiss, rock that is 2.7 to 3 billion years old. That is 2/3 the age of Earth itself. These stones existed before life crawled onto land, before the atmosphere had breathable oxygen, before continents as we know them even formed. You are walking on the surface of deep time. Fact 42. Bigger than a country, emptier than a neighbourhood. Cairngorms National Park covers 4,528 square kilometres, making it larger than the entire nation of Luxembourg. Yet only 18,000 people live within its borders. That is fewer residents than some London neighbourhoods, a wilderness the size of a country with the population of a village. Fact 41. The fastest river in Britain. The River Spey stretches 172 kilometres, making it Scotland's second longest river. But it's not about length, it's about speed. The Spey from Arn flows faster than any other major river in Britain. During floods, it moves more water per second than the Thames despite being half the length. A river that chose intensity over size. Loch Ness never freezes, not even during Highland winters that drop to -20 degrees Celsius. The reason is a thermocline effect. Cold water sinks, warm water from below rises, creating an endless circulation loop. While everything around it turns to ice, Loch Ness keeps churning. Physics as a heating system. Visibility in Loch Ness is about 10 centimetres, roughly 4 inches. The water is stained. Dark brown from peat runoff, thick as tea. You could have a submarine floating 1 metre in front of you and never see it. The most famous lake for monster sightings has the perfect built-in camouflage. Total darkness, the third deadliest whirlpool on Earth. Between the islands of Jura and Scarborough lies the Corryvreckan whirlpool, the third largest in the world. At full tide, currents reach 8.5 knots, around 16 kilometers per hour, generating waves up to 9 meters tall. The roar of churning water can be heard from 16 kilometers away. It's not just dangerous. It's loud. Underwater pyramid. What causes Corryvreckan's chaos? A pyramid-shaped basalt pinnacle rises 29 meters below the surface from a hole 219 meters deep. Britain's tallest sea stack is cracking. The Old Man of Hoy stands 137 meters tall, a freestanding tower of red sandstone and basalt rising from the sea. It's one of the United Kingdom's most iconic sea stacks, visible for miles. But there's a problem. A 40-meter vertical crack has been growing through its south side since 1992. Geologists agree it will collapse. They just don't know when. The sea stack that lost a leg. The Old Man of Hoy wasn't always a single pillar. Originally, it was a double arch with 2 legs. A violent storm in the early 19th century washed one leg away, leaving the lonely tower we see today. A sketch from 1819 by William Daniell shows both legs, the old man literally. It lost a limb, a crack that counts down. That 40-meter crack splitting the Old Man of Hoy isn't stable. The base is under constant wave attack. Erosion eats away at its foundation every single day. It is a geological time bomb. The countdown is running, but the clock has no numbers. Could be days, could be centuries. Nobody knows. A concert hall carved by lava. Fingal's Cave. Cave on the island of Staffa is 75 meters deep and 20 meters high, entirely formed from hexagonal basalt columns. But what makes it legendary is the acoustics. The cave's geometry creates near-perfect sound reflection. In Gaelic, it is called an uam bin, the melodious cave. Composer Felix Mendelssohn visited in 1829 and was so inspired he wrote his Hebrides Overture based on the echoing waves. Fact 32. A bridge of fire between nations. Fingal's Cave and the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland were formed by the same lava flow 60 million years ago. They were once connected, before the Atlantic Ocean tore them apart. The legend says the giant Finn McCool built a bridge between Scotland and Ireland. Science says the legend is half true. The bridge existed. Britain's Arctic plateau was made of lava. The Cairngorms hold the largest subarctic plateau in the British Isles, sitting over 1,000 meters high with a tundra climate. This is not alpine. This is Arctic. The landscape feels more like northern Canada or Norway than Scotland, rolling, barren, treeless, and merciless. There is an observatory on top of Britain. On the summit of Ben Nevis, you will find the ruins. It began as a weather observatory that operated from 1883 to 1904. Victorian scientists lived here, year-round, taking hourly measurements in subarctic conditions. Over 21 years, they recorded 1.5 million observations. It was technically the highest building in Britain, a frozen stone house on the roof of the kingdom. A car climbed Scotland's highest mountain. In May 1911, Henry Alexander Jr. drove a Model T to the summit of Ben Nevis as a publicity stunt to prove American cars were superior to British ones. It took 5 days. Picture shoving a car up a mountain in 1911 when automobiles were barely more advanced than horse carriages. Absolutely. Effective? The story's still told today. Fact 28. The mountain that exploded. Ben Nevis isn't just a mountain. It's the eroded core of a supervolcano that erupted and collapsed about 350 million years ago. What you're climbing today is the frozen inner dome of a volcanic system comparable in power to Krakatoa. Scotland's highest point was born in fire. Fact 27. A scar you can see from space. The Great Glen Fault is a 100-kilometer-long tectonic fault line slices Scotland diagonally, from southwest to northeast. It is so straight and so deep you can see it from orbit. This is the geological knife that cut Scotland in two. Fact 26. Scotland slid sideways. Over 400 million years, the land north of the Great Glen Fault shifted roughly 100 kilometers to the southwest. It is a jigsaw puzzle that rearranged itself. The Highlands you see today weren't always where they are now. They travelled. The fault still growls. The Great Glen Fault isn't dead. Since 1816, there have been about a dozen recorded earthquakes along the line, the strongest hit Inverness in 1816 with a magnitude of 5.1. The most recent tremor was in 2021. The scar is still alive. It's just sleeping. Is Nessie just gas? Some scientists believe seismic activity along the Great Glen Fault releases gas bubbles from the bottom of Loch Ness. These bubbles rise and disturb the surface, creating mysterious ripples and wakes. The most famous monster in the world might be geological burps. Romantic? No. Plausible? Absolutely. George Orwell almost drowned here. In August 1947, author George Orwell nearly died in the Corryvreckan whirlpool after misreading tide tables. His boat capsized, and he and his 3-year-old son were stranded on a rock until rescue. He survived. Then he went to the island of Jura and finished writing 1984. The whirlpools spared him so he could write a darker future. The Witch's Washing Machine. The name Corryvreckan comes from the Gaelic Coir Breacain, meaning cauldron of the speckled seas or cauldron of the plaid. Legend says the Cailleach, the ancient winter goddess, washes her giant plaid here. When it is clean, she lays it over Scotland and winter begins. A whirlpool as divine laundry. Mythology explaining hydrology. Glencoe is not just a valley, it is the collapsed remains of a 420-million-year-old supervolcano. It was the first place on Earth where geologists recognized and documented a caldera subsidence in ancient rocks. Scottish geologist Sir Edward Bailey pioneered the concept here in the early 1900s. Glencoe literally defined how we understand volcanic collapse. If you're enjoying these facts and your mind is already blown, do us a favor, hit that like button and subscribe. Because we're only halfway through and the next 20 facts get even wilder. Fact 20. A canal 65% natural. The Caledonian Canal stretches 100 kilometers from Scotland's east to west coast, connecting the Atlantic to the North Sea. But here's the genius part. Only 35 kilometers were actually dug by hand. The rest uses natural lochs, Dochfor, Ness, Oich and Lochie, all sitting perfectly in the Great Glen. Nature did 65% of the work for free. Fact 19. A staircase for ships. At Banavia, the Caledonian Canal features Neptune's staircase, the longest staircase lock in Britain. It is 8 locks in a row, lifting boats 20 meters over 90 minutes. Picture a ship climbing a mountain, one step at a time. Built between 1803 and 1820. Built by engineer Thomas Telford, it still works perfectly today. Fact 18. A canal that opened already obsolete. The Caledonian Canal cost £910,000, took 19 years to build instead of the planned 7 years, and when it finally opened in 1822, it was already outdated. Steam-powered ships with iron hulls had gotten too big. The canal opened the same day. It became irrelevant, a monument to miscalculation. Yet today it attracts over 500,000 visitors a year. From failure to tourist magnet, Scotland's specialty. Fact 17. Britain's freezer. The village of Braemar in the Cairngorms has recorded Britain's lowest temperature twice, minus 27.2 degrees Celsius on February 11, 1895, and again on January 10, 1982. Same record, 87 years apart. It's the coldest place in Britain, a permanent Arctic outpost in the Highlands. Fact 16. Winds that lift cars. In January 1993, the Cairngorm Summit Weather Station recorded the highest wind speed ever measured in the United Kingdom, 283 kilometers per hour. That's 176 miles per hour, strong enough to flip vehicles and rip roofs off buildings. At that speed, the mountain becomes a weapon. Fact 15. Snow that refuses to melt. The Cairngorms receive an average of 320 centimeters of snow annually. Some snowfields in System Hérad and on Ben Macdui survive from one winter to the next, persisting through summer. They're the only semi-permanent snowfields in Britain. In a country famous for rain, not ice, these patches, they are glacial ghosts, a flat plateau that kills. In November 1971, 5 school children and 1 adult died of hypothermia on the Cairngorm Plateau. They got lost in a snowstorm on the 1,200 meters high plateau. The terrain is so flat and featureless that in whiteout conditions, navigation becomes impossible. Britain's deadliest mountain disaster did not happen on a peak. It happened on flat ground. Ground. Flatness itself was the killer. Fact 13. Arctic animals in Scotland. On the Cairngorm Plateau, you will find animals that should not exist at 57 degrees north latitude. Snow buntings, ptarmigans and reindeer. 80% of Britain's snow bunting population breeds here. These creatures are Arctic relics, survivors of an ice age that never quite ended. Fact 12. Treacherous tides. The Orkney Islands sit just 16 kilometres from the mainland of Scotland, close enough to sea, but the Pentland Firth between them is one of the most dangerous stretches of water in the world. Tidal currents rip through at terrifying speeds, creating whirlpools, standing waves, and underwater chaos. Geography as a moat. Vikings named it after architecture. The island of Staffa gets its name from the Old Norse word stafa, meaning staff or pillar. Viking explorers looked at the hexagonal basalt columns and thought of their own vertical building beams. They saw geology and thought of construction. Fact 10. Nature does math automatically. The basalt columns of Staffa formed through slow cooling of lava. As the surface solidified, the material contracted and cracked into hexagonal patterns, the most energy-efficient geometry for distributing stress. Fact 9. A cliff waiting to give birth. St. John's Head on the island of Hoy rises 352 metres, one of Britain's tallest vertical sea cliffs. At the top, a massive rock overhang called Brer Bruch is slowly detaching. When it finally falls, it will create a new sea stack over 270 metres tall, twice the height of the Old Man of Hoy. Fact 8. A World War II dare. During the Second World War, young Royal Air Force pilots used the 60-metre gap between the Old Man of Hoy and the mainland as an initiation test. Flying through the narrow gap in a fighter plane with unpredictable coastal winds was a rite of passage. Geography as a test of courage. 7. Walking on air above a crumbling tower. On July 10, 2017, highliner Alexander Schultz walked a 180-metre line from the top of the Old Man of Hoy, across open air, 137 metres above the crashing sea below. It was the highest highline walk in the United Kingdom, a rope over a geological wonder, with a 40-metre crack splitting it apart. Fact 6. Chaos creates life. The violent currents over the Corryvreckan underwater pinnacle make it a paradise for filter feeders. Corals, sponges, and mussels cling to the rock. This attracts harbour porpoises, dolphins, and even minke whales who feast on fish, disoriented by the swirling water. For whales, chaos is a buffet. Fact 5. Scottish rocks are Canadian immigrants. Louisian gneiss originally came from the region of modern-day Canada and Greenland. Before the Atlantic Ocean opened 60 million years ago, Scotland and North America were joined. When the continent split, some Canadian rocks stayed behind. Scotland's oldest stones are American expats, monuments built from deep time. The Callanish standing stones on the Isle of Lewis were erected around 5,000 years ago during the Neolithic period. But the stones themselves, they are made of Louisian gneisses, 3 billion years old. Humans took the oldest rock on Earth's surface and made it sacred, 5,000 years of human history sitting on 3 billion years of geological memory. Fact 3. Commandos trained here to stop the Nazis. During World War II, British and Norwegian resistance fighters, trained in Glencoe's subarctic conditions, to prepare for the Telemark raid in Norway. In 1943, they successfully sabotaged Nazi heavy water production, crippling Germany's atomic bomb program. Scottish geography helped prevent a nuclear nightmare. Fact 2. Scotland was once Himalaya high. Glencoe and the Highlands are part of the Caledonian mountain range, a 5,000-kilometre chain that once stretched from eastern North America through Greenland, across Scotland and into Norway. Formed 400 to 500 million years ago, these mountains were as tall as the Himalayas. What we see today are the eroded roots. Fact 1. The highlands are fossils of a supercontinent collision. The mountains we see today are the stumps of a range born when ancient continents collided, closing an ocean called Iapetus. That collision created a supercontinent called Pangaea. Scotland sits on the scar tissue of Earth's greatest tectonic crash. Every highland peak is a gravestone for an ocean that no longer exists. And there you have it. 50 geography facts about Scotland you probably never knew. From whirlpools that roar like gods to mountains born in fire, from lakes deeper than the sea to rocks older than oxygen itself, Scotland is a land where geology writes the rules and time is measured in billions. Which fact changed how you see Scotland? Drop a comment below and do not forget to subscribe for more geography stories that blow your mind. Fact 3. Commandos trained here to stop the Nazis. During World War II, British and Norwegian resistance fighters trained in Glencoe's subarctic conditions to prepare for the Telemark raid in Norway. In 1943, they successfully sabotaged Nazi heavy water production, crippling Germany's atomic bomb program. Scottish geography helped prevent a nuclear nightmare. Fact 2. Scotland was once Himalaya high. Glencoe and the Highlands are part of the Caledonian mountain range, a 5,000-kilometre chain that once stretched from eastern North America through Greenland, Scotland and into Norway. Formed 400 to 500 million years ago, these mountains were as tall as the Himalayas. What we see today are the eroded roots. The peaks were scraped away eons ago by ice and time. The highlands are fossils of that ancient range. This was a supercontinent collision. The mountains we see today are the stumps of a range born when ancient continents collided, closing an ocean called Iapetus. That collision created a supercontinent called Pangaea. Scotland sits on the scar tissue of Earth's greatest tectonic crash. Every highland peak is a gravestone for an ocean that no longer exists. And there you have it. 50 geography facts about Scotland you